What's going on, everybody? Got a short and hopefully fun video coming at you today where I want to talk about LiveShell. So, if you haven't seen the like 25,000 videos I've had where I mentioned LiveShell before, live under a rock or what have you, brief overview: LiveShell is basically our light reverse shell through our agent to any device that we're installed on, allowing for remote device interrogation or surgical remediation. Now, this is not some novel concept to AI query. I don't want to present it as that or anything of that nature. Many other security tools I'm aware of do have a shell through their agent for remote remediation actions. However, I've had many discussions about this, and one of the primary through lines I've gotten is that a lot of those tend to be geared towards more kind of bulk remediation, which is super valuable in its own right, not trying to deprecate any of those solutions. And the reason for that is how they operate, right? They basically act as middleman, passing standard in and standard out to the interpreter of the respective device, retrieving that information, presenting it back to you. Now, that is definitely different than how we operate, and I believe it can be a competitive advantage based on use case, where instead of kind of standard in, standard out, acting as a middleman, we hook directly into the primary shell of that device. So in Windows, that's PowerShell. On Mac and Linux, that's Bash. So what that effectively allows us to do, since we're not acting as a pass-through, is actually, take actions on things in memory, which may seem kind of broad, but simple examples are things like editing files in line, which I've showcased before, editing cron jobs in line, which I've showcased before, or even things like, executing Python, remoting into Python, and then writing Python in a terminal window. All those may be well and good, but I was like, okay, how can I showcase that? Because I think it's pretty cool and can have a variety of use cases, but I don't know all the use cases as they pertain to a practitioner. And so my very first thought was something like NMT UI in this headless Ubuntu server. Sweet, I run that. It opens up this nice little GUI actually on my EC2 instance, which as you can see is mirrored directly on our live shell because of that direct interface. And I can go ahead and take action. I can add, remove, delete, all that fun stuff. And then I was like, you know what's even cooler than actually just NMT UI and showing that GUI? Because I thought that was pretty cool. But what would be even cooler is if I do this and go games on Invaders and run Space Invaders via ASCII via the terminal window via our live shell instance. So again, this is spawned on that EC2 instance, and then we're playing it fully interactively with the left and right arrows being the left and right and spacebar being shoot, and playing it fully remotely in this live shell session just to once again show you what a direct interface looks like. Is this the most practical from a security standpoint? One could reasonably argue no. But kind of my thought process is, hey, I'm not a practitioner. I don't know the day to day all that well. I'm just trying to make a tool that is helpful. And so, kind of the thought process here was let's take an extreme wild use case and then you can juxtapose it across the day to day use cases of how this could be useful in an actual practical security sense. And in the meantime, I'm gonna play Space Invaders remotely via command line because Space Invaders is awesome and this is my dad's and my game every time I go home. And candidly, he kicks my ass in it, so I could use the practice. But again, not necessarily the most practical from a security standpoint, but thought it was pretty cool. Let me just X out here. And thought it was pretty cool to showcase the power of what a direct shell can do with an absurd use case so that hopefully you can juxtapose it across more realistic use cases like actually interrogating a device. So that's live shell. That's one basic example of some of the extremes it can do given the way our live shell is structured and some of the what I believe are competitive advantages. Hopefully that was fun and interesting. If you have any other use cases, as always, please let me know. And if you haven't already, please check out our videos on YouTube and LinkedIn. And until next time, see ya.